Welcome to Dig Deep, the mining podcast. In this podcast, we go deep into mining news, hot topics, and live interviews with mining professionals and leading figures in the mining industry. Introducing your host, Rob Tyson, founder and director of Mining International and Mining International Executive, a leading global mining recruitment and headhunting agency.
Hi, mining community. Welcome back to another episode of the Dig Deep, the mining podcast, the show that brings you the latest insights, thought leadership, and stories from across the global mining industry. In today's show, we're joined by Jeremy Gillis, who's the Director of Capital Markets at Sendero Resources, a junior exploration company focused on unlocking the vast mineral potential in Argentina. Sendero takes a disciplined approach to early stage exploration, focusing on identifying opportunities, capital structure and allocation, data integration, and evaluating projects through lenses of a miner. In this industry, the high early stage failure rate, we're going to explore why people's jurisdictions, insights and discovery potential matter as obviously as the rocks themselves. So we've got a lot to speak about. So Jeremy, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful today, Rob. Thank you very much for having me here.
No worries. As we always start these episodes off, just wondering if you can just tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your career, how you got into the industry, how your career developed over time up until sort of present day.
Super. So Jeremy Gillis, head of capital markets at Sendero Resources. Look, I started my career any number of years ago, and I was very fortunate. I spent 10 years working in Asia with high net worth individuals and family offices. Really learnt a discipline for hard assets back then. I then went to work for Yamana Gold, which was a mid-tier gold producer with producing mines in North and South America. And I was very fortunate there. I went to work for them for a year and ended up staying for 10, but I worked in a number of different disciplines, whether it was finance or operations, ended up in procurement there. Left at the end of 2019 because I wanted a new challenge, and I'd always been very intrigued by the junior mining market, and by putting a sort of trying to do things a little bit differently. We've been involved in the structuring and restructuring and the development of some quite interesting opportunities, and without blowing the trumpet of the team, we've had more successes than failures, which, in a very crowded market of 1,700 companies, not just being dependent upon metal prices, has sort of set us apart. So I think with the many things that we've got to discuss today, it should be interesting for your viewers.
Yeah. As we were speaking just off air, and you're obviously you're from the UK, living in Canada, and you've been to so many countries. Just wondering if you can just share a little bit about some of the stories and maybe travels that you've done during your career, obviously working in the mining industry.
Yeah, it's the best way to go and see the world. I mean, I've lived in 15 different countries, and the interesting thing about mines or exploration projects, unless a couple of them that I've been to, they're normally in pretty remote places. So you get to go and sort of see the world, and I think more importantly, you get to meet a lot of local people, and by sort of having an understanding of cross-cultural communication, you can start to see how the world really works. And whether it was sort of time in Asia, which has sort of made me really understand why I feel that they are a generation ahead on the supply chain of metals, or spending time in Latin America, whether it's Chile or Argentina or Brazil, and sort of seeing how mining has monumentally changed local communities, and how fundamentally important metals and mining is, not just to producing anything, but to the communities that it affects. You start to realize that, everything we touch and feel has either been farmed or extracted from the ground. And while our broader industry, not many people understand, it is fundamentally important to everybody's existence. So, and it's one of the great things about mining. These are sort of global companies. or hope to be global companies. And it gives people this incredible opportunity that you don't get in many industries, where you can go and sort of see the world and understand people better.
Just wonder if you can give us a snapshot of Sendero Resources.
Absolutely. So Sendero, as with most things, has a little bit of history attached to it. My country manager from Argentina came to me with this property in 2020. What was interesting about it is the rocks made an awful lot of sense then. Financed it early stage. It then went public. I wasn't involved. I got very excited because it's actually next door to one of the biggest copper discoveries in the last 20 years with Filo and Jose Maria. So again, when hole 41 from Filo came out, I thought, this is it. I'm going to be sat on a beach. Unfortunately, exploration is not an easy business. And the first management team, while getting it public and managing to execute on a drill program, the market didn't like it. Company crashed, as many do. I was very, very, very fortunate. I happened to be in Buenos Aires at the time. I got a call from the founder of Yamana Gold, and now the founder of Allied Gold, a chap called Peter Moroni, who I'd worked with at Yamana, who rang me up and said, "Where are you?" I said, "Oh, I'm in Buenos Aires." So he said, "What are you doing with Penis Negras?" And I said, "How do you know about that?" He said, "How would I not know about it?" He said, "Go and get it, and I'll help support you with it." Now, when a gentleman who is the last person who built a mine in Argentina, who has just gone and taken Allied from a $500 million to a $5 billion company, says this project's interesting, you don't ask secondly. So we went in, we restructured the company. Unfortunately, we had to roll it back. I got rolled back the same as everybody else. And we brought in really, really, really quality technical team because I think that, again, the rocks did not change. The people managing them do. They don't have passports. They can't go anywhere. So we brought in highly technically competent people. We've got Steve McMullen. He won a PDAC prize for his discovery at Kamoa. Alex Kaczewski, who's our CEO, would work with Kim Ross and Centara. Again, with geologists, I think it's very interesting. Love them or hate them. What always worried me as an investor was that you ask a geologist what their favorite deposit is, they usually tell you something that's uneconomic or not in production. So having geologists who've worked in exploration, development, and production, which we have, it's not just a case of making a discovery, which is fundamentally important, but it's got to be economic. So alongside that incredible technical team, we were very fortunate to bring in Peter Moroni, Pat DiCapo from Power One, and Eduardo Elstein, an Argentine billionaire. So we just sort of went to work, full data integration, had a look, and again, we're next door to conceivably one of the biggest discoveries in the last 20 years. And we refinanced it, no promotion, just rejigged the data. And we're now financed to drill, and we're just about to start going and drilling. So what is Penis Negras? It's a 211 square kilometer landmass. That's twice the size of Paris. A very, very, very fertile ground, again, in a jurisdiction that we understand. And why are we so excited? There's been 80 holes drilled on this thing, 15,000 meters of drilling, and all of them mineralized. Now, while the market isn't taking note, certainly some people are, because our stock price has without oodles of promotion, has certainly moved. And again, it just comes down to the attitude that we've taken, which is a data-driven approach with good people doing solid work and respecting a cap structure. So the symbol, if anybody wants to go and have a look, is SEND. We're on the TSX Venture Exchange. We're very excited about what's about to come out.
How do you identify opportunities early, and what signals tell you that obviously a project is generally differentiated rather than just well marketed?
Great question. I think there's two things. I think you've got to start with what data is available. And I love projects with data for two reasons. If you know what to do with data, And no disrespect to Mr. Gates and his $500 million, but they haven't found anything. So do I think AI is going to be the future of finding metals and mining? I haven't seen, if it was, we wouldn't have $5,500 gold and $120 silver because we'd have an abundance of assets being found. So we look for assets with data, first and foremost, and then what can we do with that data? And I think an incredible example is a project that we picked up called NAC. And the NAC project had been through 8 different operators, all of this data set, completely underutilized. I picked up the option for $5,000. We then integrated all of the work. American Eagle was a company that had had a failed drill program in the US, and we've ended it in with a full drill program and a permit. Well, with our drill plan, I mean, move on a couple of years, their stock went from 3 cents to 33 cents in a day. 4 years later, they've got South 32 and Tech in there, and they're a $150 million company. And it's literally based on a good data set. Same thing as Sendero. Really good data set. Sendero, why it's incredible is on top of that, you had Lundin's putting 17 years of exploration data. So the data set, first of all, and can you do anything with the data? Secondly, is it in a jurisdiction that you can work in? Jurisdictional risk is monumentally important. I don't think it's the jurisdiction that you're in. I think it's your ability to operate. I mean, I looked at this a number of years ago. And I mean, look, First Quantum were probably deliriously happy in Panama until they expropriated the mine. Now, again, no disrespect to Panama, but they were brave enough to go and expropriate all Pablo Escobar's money. They're not going to worry about a mining company. So I think it's understanding that jurisdiction. And it's why do I like Argentina? For maybe they haven't done the world's best PR job over the last 80 years. But it's certainly a mining jurisdiction. You've got some of the world's biggest miners there. Now, again, people go, oh, they stopped Pascualama. Well, it was actually the Chileans that cancelled it. It's a great place to be a junior. I mean, look, Chile, great place to be a miner, similar to Nevada. But as a junior, it's very expensive. So you start to put all of these things together. But I think it comes down to, first and foremost, what are you looking for? Is it a property of merit? And can it be a mine? Because if it's neither of those two things, as you mentioned, then you've just got nothing more than a promote. And again, it's the same amount of work, respectfully, whether you do a promote or you go and get it right. So I'd rather put the hard work in and go and get it right, because that's how we get outsized returns. But I think it all starts from an underutilized data set. And all the projects that we've done, that's what we started off with. I founded another company called Fear Gold, and it was during COVID. There was just a very good opportunity. There'd been 100,000 meters of drilling on Vancouver Island on a property, gold grades out of this world, not grams per ton, but ounces per ton. And it never had an NI 43101 on it, and it was just in private hands, and it needed money spending on it. It was during COVID, and again, it's being able to capitalize on those opportunities and then sort of having a path forward. But it all starts from, is it a property of merit, and can it be a mine?
Yeah. Obviously, you mentioned about Argentina. Just wondering if you can just give us an overview of the Argentinian, obviously, mining industry.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we've had too many people speak about Argentina on the podcast. So
Mm-hmm.
I just wonder if you can share your thoughts on the mining industry within the country.
Yes, I think it's very interesting, because go back, before the First World War, Argentina was the 5th biggest economy in the world. And, we now live in a world of resources. So I'm certainly making a bet on a country that's got 40 million people and 50 million cows. I mean, nobody's going to go hungry. Ferociously wealthy endowment of everything. I mean, you've got the 2nd largest gas reserves in the world there, a lot of petroleum. And from a mining point of view, it's the rocks are exceptional. Now, the government, it's always had mining pedigree. There's, I think, 23 operating mines there. As the governor of La Rioja, where we operate in, had said, Peter Moroni in Yamana was the last person to build a mine there. So there is this mining pedigree. It's certainly opening up now because, as we're seeing with this rise in metals price, they've made massive strides as a country. I mean, it's the only, I think, G20 country that's running a surplus. But they have certainly made strides. They have, there is a mining pedigree there. Nobody's had a mine expropriated there. And I think it's just under the radar. And, look, obviously there is risk there, but with, this is big elephant country. And if you are looking for, intergenerational deposits, there's a reason why every major mining company is there. Then you go to the next level of what is your ability to operate there. Well, who normally has problems? You go to any major city in the world that you don't know and you go out drinking and you walk down the wrong street, you have a problem. There's a reason why, you should look at, we certainly do. I'm not going to go and get involved in a project in Timbuktu if I've never been there and I don't understand it. I understand a little bit about Argentina and its history and the people. Well, again, that gives you a good start. On top of that, it's why we brought in Mr. Elstein to help us out with Sendero. Because, who knows the country better than an Argentine billionaire who made his money working for George Soros. So we've got not just somebody who can help us jurisdictionally, but somebody who certainly understands arbitrage and finance. And, when we're looking at moving projects forward, having that understanding and really understanding the jurisdiction monumentally helps. So they are open for business. You look at it, these RIGI tax incentives that they put there, they're trying to get foreign investment. Look, in a country that, in Canada, I don't know what the numbers are now, probably 20 years to permit a mine. To name drop, when Peter had sold Yamana, he had to go to Ethiopia to go and build a mine. And in 2 years to have, I think, again, I'm not sure if those numbers are correct, but they're not wildly off, to get something permitted and start building is monumental. So I think Argentina might be misunderstood, might have incredible stakes, but as a mining jurisdiction, look, it's phenomenal. There is a pedigree to mining there, and look, I've stopped reading what it says in the news about this guy's nuts or this guy's great or etc. etc. Boots on the ground. Can you go and execute a drill program? Can you apply for permits and get them? Absolutely. And again, to shamelessly plug something else, Mineral Creek in Carris, everybody said to me, you'll never get a drill permit on Vancouver Island. I said, okay, well then why are you giving me money? You must be more nuts than I am. Vancouver Island was the biggest producer of gold in Canada before the Second World War, when grade mattered. So you're in the right place. It comes under the same rules and regulations as the rest of BC. So if you follow that process, why would you not get a permit? So I think the problem that one is seeing out there is, people not understanding the country that they're in, and then things go wrong, and then they start blaming the country. I'm sort of seeing this. It's really simple. You follow the rules and regulations, and if you understand the jurisdiction that you're in, things should work out. When people start going, where are you? And I go, Argentina, and they go, yeah, Chile, Argentina, it's all the same. I'm saying to them, well, are you assuming that Canada and the US are the same? So it comes down to your ability to operate. And I think IAMGOLD had a mine in Mali. And what was very telling when I looked at this any number of years ago, remember Yamana, they'd moved a town to build a mine. I looked at mines that had lost production due to any kind of unrest locally, blocking the road, etc. The only mine in the world that hadn't lost a day of production in the 15-year period that I'd had a look was IAMGOLD had a mine in Mali, which had been through 7 or 8 military coups, and the mine had never lost a day of production. So again, it comes down to one's ability to operate, not necessarily, the jurisdiction that you're in.
How do you assess capital structures at the outset, and why do you believe in, obviously, a poor structure is often the silent killer or otherwise good projects?
Look, the exploration business is very interesting. People spend money like they're cash flowing businesses, and they're not. So every dollar that you need to spend, um, you need to raise. So I think cap structures are monumentally important. I find it very sort of interesting at the moment that every financing that's put out is upsized. Well, again, I'm sure bankers are deliriously happy to go and sell you on the fact that you need to go and take more money, especially if you're paying them. It was very interesting. A number of years ago, Yamana had sold a property to Lundin Mining. And I was fortunate enough to meet Lucas Lundin, and everybody was asking him questions about this, that, and the other, and his thoughts on that. I sort of was privileged enough to ask a question, and I said, how do you always get your timing right? You know, you buy things at the right price, you sell them at the right price. And he said, because it's 30% of our money that we're spending. So I think that a very conditioned approach to capital again, gets you better returns. And if you look at every dollar as a prisoner, that if you let it go, it ain't coming back. So again, with capital structure, it's monumentally important. I look at these companies that have got, printing hundreds of millions of shares. Well, you as an investor have then got hundreds of millions of shares in front of you. So I think that cap structures are monumentally important. I mean, to give a shameless plug, Sendero, because of that rollback, we had 19.5 million shares. We've raised a little bit of money, but, we've now got 26 million shares. And the warrants, which are from over a year ago, they're I think like $1.75 in the money, and nobody's issued them. But this constant printing of paper does not help you as an investor, because if you're fortunate enough to have success, and it's not easy, it's then the cap structure that's going to go and propel it. So you look at it, where you're raising that money from, and who it is. So you look at it, Sendero, 60-70% of our cap table, maybe 50% now with this most recent raise, is in super strong hands. And we did a financing in November, that closed early December at 95 cents. I did a live offering, but there was just no way I was doing a warrant, because again, you're just issuing more paper. So the cap tables are really, really important. I think that this is why we're seeing companies that now haven't moved. The gold price has moved or metal price has moved, and their share price hasn't moved, because these are tired stories with hundreds of millions of shares, gajillions of warrants. And I appreciate the market's not been easy, but your cost of capital, you've got to go and pay for it. So the tighter that cap structure is and where those shares are monumentally important. And I think this is where, again, getting back to the people thing, what we're lucky to have at all of our companies is, really sophisticated investors. And what's telling to me is Peter Maroney filed SEDI on Sendero. He didn't have to. But again, I think it's a strong message to the market that he's not selling, because he believes in the future of the company. Now, if you've got something good, it's not just so much about getting more people to go and buy the shares, it's getting your investors to keep on holding them. And it's that bet that then you've got that talk that, that allows these things to go up. And if you're battling hundreds of millions of shares in front of you, where's the opportunity? And I remember about 12 months ago, somebody called me up and said, I'm thinking about going in on this financing. And I'm like, these are seriously risky investments. Unless you can get a 10x on this, then, why would you invest? I said, can you see a 10x in this? And he said, oh, yes, absolutely. And I said, well, but let's say the pricing of this financing was 13 cents. I said, they've got, 100 million warrants from before that have got to be exercised, and then you're battling those. So I think that's why we're seeing liquidity events recently have just been, actually sending stocks down. And there's so much paper out there from this sort of overhang of the last 5-10 years that needs to clean up. So if everybody's saying, oh, why haven't the juniors moved yet? It's really, really, really mathematical. if people are doing 3-4 times their average volume and their share price isn't moving, there's something wrong with the capital structure. So I think that, again, I've seen it with, especially with Sendero, people have said, but I couldn't get my head around getting in at $1. I'm like, you're looking at the wrong thing. It's not the fact that it's $1 a share. It's the fact that at that time, there was only 24 million shares in front of you. And, we've gone from $1 to $2 in 8 weeks. No news. We haven't actually done anything because I think, people are seeing, we've got a recipe for success on the two things that you mentioned thus far. We've got the right people. We're in the right place, and we've got the right cap structure as well. So again, selfishly looking at this from a pure returns point of view, if it's got a buggered cap structure, then you're just fighting. There's too much in front of you for any of these things to move.
Early stage companies have a obviously higher failure rate. Why do you believe people matter more than rocks at this particular stage? And obviously, I know you have spoken a little bit about it, but I suppose just focusing on why people matter more than the rocks.
Yeah, I think that, look, and I'd sort of learnt this by writing a lot of checks and losing an awful lot of money, which I'm delighted about now because I've got tax losses when it actually matters. I think from a couple of lenses, unfortunately, the junior mining business has, again, in the Valley of the Blind, the one-eyed man is king. The average company that's been a lifestyle company, it's very easy to sort of outperform them. But there's been this malaise, and people have these companies and they basically outsource the exploration, they outsource the raising of the money, and, it's just an outsourced job. So again, if you've got quality technical people who know what they're looking for, that puts your chances of success way more. And again, people who understand data should be dealing with the data. If you're going to an external company saying, do me an interpretation, it means that you don't have the capacity to do it internally. So you've got to have the right people who understand the right rocks and what they're looking for. Secondly, we've been very, very fortunate at these companies to have the backing of titans of the industry. Now, again, people are starting to see the incredible ability of some of the people who we have backing us and their experience. Now, when you've got people who go and build billion-dollar companies for breakfast, investing in million-dollar companies, unfortunately, a number of investors sort of took this as it doesn't matter to them. They've got a lot of money. That concept is ridiculous, especially when they're buying stocks because some person who's been paid to say that they're good says that they're good. So we've got this incredible bandwidth and they're there to help. Well, obviously we couldn't afford to pay them. And, the experience that they have and even being able to get a bit of their bandwidth is incredible. So you start to put these layers of people together, whether they're technical or capital markets wise. I mean, look, some of the best people in this business are Lundins and Ivanhoe, Robert Freeland. I mean, again, they're either extraordinarily lucky or they're just used to something formulaic. Why are the same people successful over and over again? Because I think there is a formula to this, and it's you do a lot of hard work, and then you have the best people you can get, and then you manage your treasury, and then if you're really, really, really fortunate and you do all of those things right, then you make a major discovery. But there is a reason why. I mean, especially you look at our land package at Sendero, you're talking about 211 square kilometers and you're putting a 3-inch hole in it. You really need, with a face like mine, I think we can ascertain that luck is no part of this. You've just got to do good work. And when I see that data integration that went on and our internal geos who did this, and then them understanding the next door property, and all that industrial knowledge that's there, and the very, very, very slight nuances that you see that they have put together a model. Or when I see, the very good ideas that Peter or Pat or Eduardo or the advice that they're kind enough to give us, you just can't buy this And that's why in the beginning, I mean, look, I think Fruta del Norte is the world's best example of this. Kinross went in there, paid $1.3 billion for it. Unfortunately, they didn't get it right. Lundin's bought this for 250 million. And again, it wasn't, the rocks didn't change, but the people managing them did. And I think it's just, that experience. And then again, actually listening to super smart people, that, and I think it's why certainly at Sendero and a couple of the other companies that we've got, people are starting to realize why those people are so important. Because again, if we are fortunate enough to go and start make a major discovery, I can tell you something now. The bandwidth of Peter, Pat, and Eduardo and some of the other investors that we've got is second to none, because they're playing 4-dimensional chess while people like me are playing noughts and crosses. Now, if we have to deal with a major mining company, they could eat me for breakfast. But, that's where, having the bandwidth of people that we can have, we're very lucky to call as investors and advisors, certainly comes into play. And, when you're sort of trying to make a decision on a financing or how to actually, some smart ideas, these people have done it all before. So I'd say, again, I think to your point, this business has a monumentally high chance of failure. All you're doing is taking that to you're evening up the odds a little bit, which again helps your chances of success. So I think the people, especially early stage, they're absolutely paramount. I mean, and again, even at the other end of the market, we saw recently the chap who was the CEO of Barrick. He seemed to have some kind of friction with a country, and it cost him his job. So, and now their share price has exploded. So, predominantly, I'd say more so in the junior end. And then again, it comes down to who are these people? I see people who are running 9 companies. Well, they're obviously far more efficient than we are, because they're able to run 9 companies. Interestingly, you start to look at these people and you start to look at these companies. And again, sorry to be focused purely on returns and be a terrible capitalist, but it's what we're all doing here. They've not generated any value. So I think that's why, again, people who find deposits seem to continually find deposits. People who make outsized returns seem to make outsized returns. I don't think it's based on luck.
Why Sendero not just a Closeology story?
So when I looked at this in 2020 and we actually geologically looked at it, the rocks made sense then. And this was before Philo. I think the monumental mistake was Philo was at about $2.50 at the time. Should have put the money into that, but you live and learn. I think the rocks made sense then. Now, that's a very good start. And again, when you're talking about 80 holes that have been drilled and all mineralized, it gives you a better batting average. I think that while there have been a lot of people who've run to the area, and yes, big deposits do hang out with big deposits. I think it was only by luck that we ended up with this land package, because if you have a look at Philo and Jose Maria and all of those Lundin properties, and our property, it was all part of Eldorado had it all at one point. La Rioja was not sort of open to mining at the time, and sort of that changed. But there's been a lot of exploration done on this property. And again, we've been very fortunate to have access to the internet and see every press release that Lundin's put out, because you're able to see what they've done right and wrong over their 17-year journey before they made a major success. So yes, I don't think we're just a Closeology play, because again, we were there before everybody else rocked up. But the rocks, and if anybody looks at the mineralization and the way that their deposits were found, we followed the same. And I think that's why when we go and drill, if we get sort of, if the exploration gods are smiling on us, then we go and expedite sort of what they did in 17 years very quickly. But the long and the short of it is, the rocks are exactly the same, and 20 kilometers in geological terms might make you a Closeology play. And yes, I believe we are a Closeology play, but more so than that, we've actually got the same similarities as next door, which none of the other juniors in the area have. So if somebody's looking for the next, I'm not here to give financial advice, but if somebody was looking for the next Philo or the next Jose Maria Luna Hawassi, again, you take Penis Negris, we have the same characteristics. So, that sort of high grade silver, or, those same gold credits, mineralization from surface. There's other people who are purporting to have a philo lookalike. Well, it's really interesting. They've got no gold and their mineralization starts in 300 meters. So we think that, again, Closeology, absolutely, it'll only get you so far, but you've actually got to have, if you're going to play that game, you've got to be able to go and demonstrate to the market that you have similar characteristics. And I think our model shows, and again, we're delighted to have these neighbours because it's not just their Closeology. We're on the same road as them. So, and these are some of the most incredible roads I've ever seen, all very kindly paid for by the people who are building a $6 billion mine next door. Again, should we have exploration success and we move down the value chain, that free carry through to those electricity substations, the roads, that infrastructure, which is billions of dollars, makes our economics monumental. So it's not just filtering out we've got a Closeology play, which I know doesn't guarantee any success, but I think we've demonstrated to the market that at least we have some geological similarities. What we now hope to go and do through this drill campaign is go and demonstrate that we've actually got the same thing. Because if anybody went and had a look at NGEX, which housed Luna Hawassi, Filo del Sol, and Jose Maria, in 2009, it was a $40 million company. Well, I bet anybody wished they'd bought it then, because they've thus far span out, I don't know, $10, $12 billion worth of assets. So a Closeology will get you so far. If you're going to say that we've got the same, you got to go and prove it with the rocks. And I did the same with NAC. It's surrounded by any number of projects. But this had the rocks made sense. And even though there's a far bigger company at the time who had all the ground around it, big companies do miss a trick every so often. So I think there is luck that goes into it. But, ultimately, the rocks are the rocks. And it's your understanding of those and if they have similarities to the neighbours.
Obviously, you mentioned data is very important. How does integrated data fundamentally change your understanding of a system?
It's the same with data. It's the same thing, garbage in, garbage out. If you're dealing with bad data that hasn't been equalized or normalized, you're making bad decisions. So I think what we've really worked hard on is to take all of that literal free data. Mag surveys are expensive, drilling's expensive. So it gives you a springboard to exploration. Simply put, if you go and take that data and you know how to integrate those layers, you are building a pathway to finding something. And again, AI hasn't figured this out. And I don't even think people understand, or I'm not seeing people understand, how to integrate data, because you've got to get people who understand how to use how to extrapolate and understand those data sets. So first and foremost, it's about synthesizing that data. Now, again, if you've had 8 different companies working on it, you've got 8 different types of this. It might be in a different language. And people are inherently lazy. It's why they want to go and use Chat GPT to go and ask them what they should have for dinner. This just comes down to taking that data, understanding that data, and then building it out in layers. And sorry to say it, but I see most people can't be bothered to go and do that. And, there is an art to this. And that's why starting from scratch with a decent data set is monumental. Then if you can go and move it forward, I think you're drilling holes that cost the same as sports cars. Why people use a drill bit as an exploration tool, to me, is ridiculous. You build out a model. either your drilling confirms that model or it doesn't. If you're using your drill bit, millions of dollars to drill some holes, you might as well be throwing darts at a dartboard. Either your model's wrong and then you go and fix that, or your model's right and then you've gone and cracked the code. But fundamentally, it's why I don't like projects without data. If it's got data and it's a clean data set and you've got people who know how to utilize it, that I think de-risks these things by sort of 80, 90%. So, and then that integration is fundamentally important. And when anybody says to me, oh yeah, we've outsourced the integration, yeah, I ain't writing them a check. They're not investable in my book, because again, when I hear people say after their third or fourth drill campaign that the mineralization is very difficult, right? Well, what have you been doing for the last 3-4 years? I'm not suggesting it's easy, but if either your model's wrong or your idea's wrong or your data's wrong, but just saying it's very difficult, I know it's not easy, but when people are still trying to figure out systems or poking holes willy-nilly, it just tells me one thing, that they've got absolutely no clue what they're doing.
How does your experience and local knowledge and stakeholder alignment reduce jurisdictional risk?
So I think that by understanding the people and what they're actually looking for, again, it goes back to what we said before, you've really got to understand the jurisdiction that you're working in. And I learned this very, very easily. The first 6 months I spent in China, I tried to do things my way and didn't get very far. You start to realize there's local nuances, and when you understand the people and you understand their wants and needs, it certainly helps. If you're looking at a country like Argentina through the eyes of a Canadian, yeah, forget it. These things need to be assessed locally, and making sure that your stakeholders, again, whether that's the government, whether that's the local community or whomever, and that's why we're really fortunate at Sendero. The provincial government has been exceptionally, they've worked with us, and they renegotiated. We had some option ground from them. They renegotiated this, and it reduced a massive overhang, because again, you're all in this together, and assuming that you need license to operate, and it's from every stakeholder, and that's whether it's the shareholders or the local community. How many projects are there out there that are incredible projects that can't move forward because, again, nobody's really listened to anything? To go back to the Fruta del Norte example, Kinross, one of the largest miners in the world, couldn't get it right. And it took somebody else who, went and spoke to everybody from the president down, really got an understanding of what was wanted and needed. And again, we've kind of followed suit there at Sendero, and by having the support of the local government and working with them to everybody's benefit, we've moved this project on leaps and bounds. While then, when you get to the sort of, if one's lucky enough to get to the production side of it, by educating people and working with them, whether they're indigenous groups in Canada or local communities in Argentina, you really want to be making sure people are updated and understand and are on board with what you're doing, because if not, you can have the best rocks in the world. If you don't have a mechanism to pull them out, then they're worthless to you.
How do you evaluate projects through the lens of a miner rather than obviously just purely as an explorer?
I think it's a common mistake that I've seen. People are hell-bent on making a discovery. Great, unbelievable. But if the project's not going to be a mine, then you're not going to be able to sell it. And I think everybody thinks that these things are really easy to sell. Well, funnily enough, I don't think they are. And I think the market is showing us that they're not that easy to sell. And yes, every junior mining promoter is going out there going, well, we'll sell the project. That's really interesting. Have you sold one before? So I think that, again, and it's, if you start from the lens of, is this all economic? And if you're putting your exploration plan together through the eyes of the miner, yeah, and what they're going to need. Again, it comes down to, negotiating your contracts. And that's why we had to push back very hard against the government. because the contract that we had before would have capped our success and would have made the project not get sold. Juniors are very used to signing silly agreements, that then, and I've learned this at Yamana when we would buy projects, somebody's got to go and clean that up. So you go and get it right from the beginning. It's great. Similarly, if your exploration plan is being put together through the eyes of a miner, then that is your end buyer. Now, if you've got somebody who's only ever worked in exploration, I think that you're doing yourself an injustice, because, it's like asking a man who puts windows into a house to go and build your foundations. I think that if you can go and have that foresight to look 1, 2, 3 steps in front of you, that should you be fortunate, or your exploration plan, again, it's whether you want to put an exploration plan to go and charm the market, or whether you want to go and put an exploration plan to go and demonstrate to the end buyer what they're going to want. I know what's going to get you something better in the long run, because if you're just putting results out to impress the market, that's great. But Jim, who's a very happy shareholder with his few thousand shares, ain't pulling up $100 million to go and buy your project. So unless you have an insight into what the major miners are looking for, what your customer is looking for, I think you're doing yourself an injustice, because you're then limited on, you could waste a lot of money. So again, if you have an idea, and that's why some of, I think everybody who works at Sendero, whether it's Alex who worked at Kinross and Centaur, or Steve who worked at Ivanhoe, or Peter who founded Yamana and Allied, that big company experience. Again, these people bought and evaluated projects. Well, they know what they're looking for, because they were the people who would be looking at projects as, should we go and buy this? And having that mindset monumentally helps your exploration when you're putting together what your exploration plan should look like.
How do you balance discovery upside with a clear exploitation and exit strategy?
I think that, again, you've always got to be sat there thinking, how do we move this forward? And how do we move this forward is either you got to go and build a mine. Well, actually, we do have the capacity to do that, should we be lucky enough to find something. Or how are you actually going to go and transact it? Now, I've never run a marathon. Yeah, I'm not going to get up tomorrow and go and run a marathon. I don't think it would end well for me. So assuming about how you're going to go and sell a project when you've never bought or sold a project, I think is foolhardy. So being mindful of the next iteration of the company, I think, is monumentally important. And it's always sort of, yes, everybody's desperate for that exploration, discovery. But as we've seen, companies go up and then suddenly they come crashing down, because I don't think most of them have a 3-4 year plan. They're looking 3 months out. So again, at Sendero, we've just been very quiet. We don't go out there. We just said, yeah, we've inherited a load of debt. We've got to renegotiate this contract with the government, and we've got to build a model. And that was the story for 9 months. And, the stock just sort of ticked along without a clear plan. And if you can't answer the question, are you going to do winter drilling or not? Yeah. If people are going, we're going to wait and see, that petrifies me, because it means that they don't have a clear plan about what next. Because either your model is correct, and yeah, don't get me wrong, people get lucky all the time. I sold a project for a company called Northern Lights to Rainer Silver. And then by good fortune, Northern Lights ended up with an NSR on it. Well, completely by chance, Rainer Silver got sold to Torex. Well, this little Northern Lights company, which I think is on the CSE and LR, holds an NSR on this Medicine Springs project, which looked like a Taylor deposit. Well, that's a multi-billion-dollar project. And now that you've got Torex, who are exceptionally bright at what they're doing, spending scores of millions of dollars on the project, that has a high chance of success. Now, the buy-down portion is probably the value of Northern Lights company. Now, yeah, that's a lottery ticket. But, and then they have some other decent projects as well. But that's the luck in this business. You never know what's going to happen. You can't just be reliant on luck. I think that having a plan, sticking to the plan, and then discounting all of the risk does take your chances of success and gets you better returns. So, yes, everybody gets excited about making a discovery, but then what? And how many times have we all seen these companies go up? Everybody gets excited, and then their second drill program fails miserably because they start doing things out of desperation. Suddenly they've got a lot more money. And then, it's like, it normally ends bad for footballers who suddenly, start making hundreds of thousands of pounds, dollars or drachmas every week. And then, they all seem to go and buy a sports car and a flashy watch and then go and meet the wrong type of women or men. But I think that's where having a plan, making sure that you're not just dependent or having a plan past that exploration success, because if not, it then becomes incrementally harder. I was talking to somebody else about this on a project that we're looking at. I said, you got to be careful of what you wish for. And the CEO said to me, why? And I said, because you've got a very strong chance of success at your company. The rocks are good. And, and I was willing to write a check. I said, but what are you going to do, next? And he said, well, we're focused on the drilling. I went, yeah, you're not inspiring me full of confidence, because unless you have a plan for what happens next, okay, don't spend an awful lot of time on it. But if, work on the basis that, why would you be bothering drilling if you didn't think you were going to have outrageous success? And then, what is your plan then? If anybody says to me, I haven't thought about it, that worries me immensely. So that's where, again, I think we're extraordinarily lucky at Sendero, because should we have success with the people that we have involved in the company, technically in capital markets, if we've got to go and do a deal with a major, that there is nobody I would rather have on our side, because they're looking at that. It's the same as chess players. They're all seemingly looking 5, 6, 7 steps ahead. And again, I think that's why they have monumental success.
And lastly, and concluding, what's the short-term and medium-term outlook for Sendero?
So we're very fortunate. We got funded for drilling back in December. I think that another astute investor came along and wanted in on the story. Very strategic. They didn't want to be named. They paid a premium. Again, 4-month paper, no warrant, perfect. So we're ramping up to drill at the moment. And we'll have drill results coming over the next few months. So anybody who's lucky enough to go and buy a share in this thing has got a lottery ticket. Well, I think instead of having 6 numbers, you've only got to pick 3, but has a very good chance of success because of those people. So we'll be putting drill results out there. Another company that we're involved with called Caris, which again has got this property on Vancouver Island and this very nice land package in the Caribou, which, how did this project come about? Came about because Peter Moroney and Yamana had invested in it. So when that fell on hard times, you're damn right we wanted to pick it up, because Yamana had put money in 2022 at a 30 million valuation, and we picked it up for $3 million. Well, Yamana proved that they knew a thing or two about things. So that's coming out now. That's just been financed. That'll be trading in about 6 to 8 weeks. So apart from that, we're just hunkering down, drilling, and now we're looking at, the what's next. So expect some drill results from Sendero, and then, it's just, it's deciding on what's next. And as we go and get this story out there, which nobody seems to have heard of, we're really excited to go and sort of bring Caris to market with what that one's got, and then at Sendero, really showing, why we've got the people that we've got, and really showing, the potential of this property. I think it was interesting to me that it took 17 years for Lundin or Philo to become an overnight success. And then everybody realized that it was something, and the thing went to, $34. what's been really interesting about this journey at Sendero, met a load of people, very, very quiet. They're not there sat on chat boards shouting and saying this, that, or the other. They look for these early stage opportunities and they go in big, because if they think they've got the right management team, the amount of people who I've met who were buying philo between $1 and $3 and then hung on to the end. I think that, again, that's why you've seen at Sendero the price go from 12 cents to $2 in a 13-14 month period, is because the right investors, I'd be delighted if we could get more retail, but nobody's talking about this. People are looking for positions, they're buying this stock and they're holding it because, again, should we be correct with our geological model, we are going to have results out very shortly, and that propels this thing to the moon. I'm not here to give financial advice, and everybody should do their own due diligence, but we're very excited about what's to come there. And then again, at Caris, you've got so much there. You've got high grade on Vancouver Island. You've got 1 million ounces at Fraser Gold. You've got 1,000 square kilometres of very fertile ground in the Caribou. Another 11,000 hectares on Vancouver Island. They've just finished a financing. They've got $7 million to go and drill on a story that nobody's ever seen. You're damn right I'm excited. So I think that, especially with this metals market, we haven't touched on that at all, because I have no control over that. With these prices, I would much rather have a story that is equivalent to the smallest house on the best street, rather something that's overpriced, overhyped, that's the biggest house on a really bad street. So I think that, as we've proven before, that looking after your cap structure, that data integration, that understanding it is going to monumentally pay dividends for all our investors. And as I'm one of the largest ones, I'm delighted to benefit from that.
Jeremy, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for sharing your story, certainly educating our mining audience and sharing your story, obviously, around Sendero and what you're looking to obviously achieve with the assets that you've got. If our audience wants to reach out to you, if they want to follow the story, how can they go about doing that, and what social media platform channels are you on?
We're on all of them. Just have a look for Sendero Resources, or email me at jeremy@senderoresources.com. Or easiest thing is have a look at your ticker symbols, SEND.V, Sendero Resources. It'll take you to the website. We're on Twitter. Interestingly, nobody apart from internal people likes or reposts anything. But we're there. Gives us a lot of time to talk to investors. And again, Rob, thank you very much for having us. It's platforms like yours that are giving people an unbiased view, which I think is critical in this space. And again, excellent job, excellent platform. And I look forward to coming back in 6 months and saying, we were absolutely right, and the stock's moved from $2 to $15, because it means that I think I'd much rather under-promise and over-deliver rather than the flip side of it, and that's only possible because of people like yourselves who are giving investors a little bit of a different view as to just ramming down stories to people. So no, thank you for all of your good work.
No, and thank you for obviously the kind words. And yeah, more than welcome to come back on the podcast later on this year. Maybe we can take a slightly different angle and speak about something else. Obviously, I think you've educated our mining industry, and I suppose looked at certain things from a different angle and from a different lens. And hopefully our listeners will look at this and maybe look at their daily routine in whatever they're doing, whether they're an explorer, whether even as a producer, and just think, I suppose, slightly differently and understand some of the things that you said, just to give a different lens. And I think you've certainly educated our industry with your vision and wisdom, and appreciate it, if you can come on later on the year and give us an update and perhaps speak about something else.
Rob, I think you're the first person who ever said that I've got any wisdom, but maybe that's because I'm getting old. I think that, again, the one thing that I've learned from circumnavigating the globe is somebody's always got something of value or a different perspective. And, I think that as we're seeing from the metals market, why are metals going berserk? It's because of risk. And, if everybody sort of worked a little bit harder and could understand people a little bit better, then maybe we wouldn't have the problems globally that we're having. But I don't think you or I are going to fix that. But I think certainly in our industry, where the majority of the people are sort of quite older or seasoned, we do have a problem, which certainly in the West, we need to start taking metals and mining more interesting. And while people want to go and work in sort of very sexy industries, we still need people to find this interesting. So we need more people to be interested about getting into this business and sticking with it because it's cyclical. So again, you're doing an incredible service to the industry, and I'm happy to come back and talk nonsense whenever you've got time for it.
Yeah, no, great. And as our obviously audience from all around the world, hope that they can share this episode far and wide. And as I always say, you don't always have to share these episodes with people within the mining industry. Maybe get people interested in mining, and someone that has obviously, as you've just said, your content is looking at things, I suppose, more realistically and not all hype. And it'd be good to share this episode with people outside of our industry, not just people in our industry. And then hopefully they will start getting to understand a little bit about the mining industry, because it is complex, as you said, is very risky. And if people are going to start to invest from outside, they do need to really, I suppose, understand the risks that mining has with it, and trying to obviously minimize those as much as possible.
Absolutely. Rob, thank you again.
Yeah, no worries. Appreciate time, and we will speak soon.
Be well.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed that episode. Great episode there. A lot of golden nuggets to take away. As I said in the conclusion, appreciate your continued support, and please keep sharing these episodes far and wide. We want to educate our mining industry as much as possible, but also people outside of our industry. So thank you for listening. And until next time, happy mining.
Thank you for listening. Remember to reach out to Rob via the show notes, and be sure to subscribe and leave a review. Until next time, happy mining, helping each other to improve the mining industry.